Bazuar në dokumente origjinale dhe materiale arkivore të SBA-ve, libri Përpjekja për Lirinë Shqiptare dhe Fundi i Jugosllavisë, kongresisti Joseph Diogardi dhe Liga Qytetare Shqiptaro-Amerikane 1990-1993 nga doktor Fatum Bislimi, votuar në anglisht në SBA, fakton historinë e vërtetë të marrëdhënieve unike shqiptaro-amerikane. Përmes dokumenteve të papublikuara më parë, libri tregon historinë e angazhimit të SBA-ve për çlirimin dhe pavarësimin e Kosovës, demokratizimin e Shqipërisë dhe angazhimin për të drejtat qytetare e njerëzore të shqiptarëve në Maqedoni, Maltezi e Luginë të Preshevës. Ky është vetëm vëllimi i parë i kësaj historie, siç e përshkruan në epilog Shirley Cloyce Diogardi, këshilltare për çështjet e Ballkanit, e cila ju bashkua lidhjes në 1994. Qysh në 17 qershor 1986 në Kongresin e SBA-ve prezantohet rezolut kongresionale për të drejtat shqiptare në Kosovë, e sponsorizuar nga vetëm një kongresist, Joe Diogardi, dhe nga miku i tij në Senat, Bob Dole. Për një vit më vonë, rezoluta tjetër për Kosovën nënshkruhet nga Diogardi dhe 58 kongresistë të tjerë në përkraje të tij. E mbani mend kërcënimin e këshillëve nga presidenti George W. Bush. Rrënjët e këtij mesazhi janë në letrën personale të 27 shtatorit 1988 dërguar Diogardit. Letra e datës 8 shkurt 1991 e aso kohës senatori Joe Biden, tani me presidenti SBA-ve, për Diogardin dhe dëgjimin që ai do udhëheqte në Senat për çështjen e Kosovës, tregon fillimin e mishërimit të Biden me Kosovën dhe shqiptarët. Këto janë vetëm pak dronca të thesarit të fakteve historike që përmbajnë librin.
Liga Shqiptaro-Amerikane shënon të vitë 35 vjetorin e formimit të saj. Është një aktivitet ky i madh, ashtu siç janë edhe vitet 35 vjet, por një përmbledhje të kësaj veprimtarie të ekspeditës shqiptaro-amerikane, profesor doktor Fatum Bislimi e ka përmbledhur në një libër të tij, një libër i cili titullohet Përpjekjet e Ligës Qytetare Shqiptaro-Amerikane dhe Fundin i Jugosllavisë. Ky është një nga librat e parë që kushtohet Ligës Qytetare Shqiptaro-Amerikane dhe ky libër vjen nga një nga aktivistët ose një nga antarët e bordit të Ligës Qytetare Shqiptaro-Amerikane, pjesëmarrës pothuajse i të gjitha aktiviteteve. Sot në këtë rast me promovimin e librit, ose si një edhe ndryshe book signing, zhvillohet këtu në New Jersey me organizimin e Ligës Qytetare Shqiptaro-Amerikane. Pjesëmarrës janë antarët e bordit të Ligës Shqiptaro-Amerikane, por do të jetë pjesëmarrëse edhe senatori i njohur Bob Menendez, i cili do të nderojë me pjesëmarrjen e tij në inaugurimin e këtij libri.
Thank you all for coming. It's wonderful to see all these friendly faces, see who were the strongest people in the Congress. I wasn't quite happy with the State Department because in those days, believe it or not, they were pro-Serb. But I had to work very hard to convince both Biden and Senator Dole and Senator, who was the other guy? Several senators, what the real facts were, because the Serbs were very good at lying. And they're doing it again. Look at Putin. That's the same bloodline. Putin, Vucic, and you name it. Now, we need to understand that you need strong people. Senator Menendez is now the most powerful senator in the Congress, House and Senate. Well, the Senate. We have strong people in the House, and we're supporting them. So it's important that you know your support here is important because he sees that you're here. That makes him feel good. And he didn't have to come today. We already had a big event for him already 2 or 3 months ago. It's going to be good to see. You know that, everybody?
Yes.
We're independent, but many people say we're independent in name only. That's not right. Because right now with the European community, you have 4 countries that don't respect Kosovo, haven't recognized it, 4 of the 28. And of the United Nations, and we're not part of the United Nations yet, it's over 100 countries, but there's almost 200 countries. So we have more than half. So we have to work. Shum boom, right?
Yes.
But we're going to do it. We've done it before. We were in terrible circumstances, as you know, under the Serbian regime with the ethnic cleansing. And that's a past chapter. We don't want to go back there, do we?
No.
So we got to teach Mr. Vučić a lesson that we know he was taught by Milosevic. Milosevic went to The Hague, and unfortunately for him, he died there. We don't want Vučić to remember all the counseling he got from Milosevic, because the same is going to happen to him. And it's not going to be from us. It's going to be the United States of America that's going to stand up for human rights first for everybody, especially for their friends. And there's no better friends for the United States of America, especially the Congress, who's always been in the front, and the Senate and the House, than the Albanian people. Is that right?
Yes.
Aren't we happy to see Senator Menendez and Nadine here again?
Yes.
Okay, with that,
Initially intended to have everyone from the board stand up and be recognized, so we will do that later. As you know, Kosovo's free, but it's not totally independent yet. And so the work of the Civic League with the U.S. Congress, who understand what is at stake for the future of Kosovo, it's not yet finished. So, and this is why we're so fortunate that Senator Menendez, who served in the Senate, am I correct, for 25 years? 30 years. 30 years. Thank you for that correction. He is now chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, as you know, and those of you who attended our previous Albanian American Civic League event with him in September were deeply aware of the depth of his knowledge about the Kosovo-Serbia conflict, his commitment to its resolution, and at a time when we are in a situation where the real threats to democracy and the rise of authoritarianism, this senator is fighting oppression. This senator is supporting democracy across the globe. We are very, very grateful.
Hello, everyone. It's good to welcome you back to New Jersey. It's good to be with you. We were honored to join with you in September, where we spoke at length about our commitment to Albanians and to Kosovo. I wanted to be here especially today as we celebrate this incredible milestone that the Congressman and Shirley have been part of, two tireless advocates on behalf of Kosovo, and among those working to achieve a Southeast Europe that is at peace, whole, and democratic. And they deserve an incredible recognition for the work that they do.
thank you.
Pleased to be here with the ambassador as well. Thank you very much for honoring us with your presence, and with the esteemed members of the board of the Albanian American Civic League and all who have come to celebrate the legacy of your organization. It's vital work on behalf of Kosovo Albanians and Albanian communities across the Balkans. Congratulations to Dr. Bislimi as well for his work to illuminate Congressman Diaguardi's and Shirley's historic efforts that spurred Congress to action on behalf of Kosovo Albanians. Congratulations. The quest for Albanian freedom and the end of Yugoslavia catalogs a critical period of the Albanian American Civic League's engagement with Congress that paved the way for an independent Kosovo years later. Both Joe and Shirley have a long history of advancing human rights of Kosovo Albanians and supporting the self-determination of Kosovo. As early as 1985 and 1986, Joe pushed for Kosovo to have a platform in the Congressional Human Rights Caucus. I used to belong, when I was in the House of Representatives, to the Congressional Human Rights Caucus. It is a powerful group of members, then at that time led by the late Tom Lantos, who was known, his name was synonymous with human rights in the world. In the early 1990s, Joe stood up for speaking out against human rights abuses in Kosovo and forged a bipartisan alliance that included Congressman Lantos, Senator Bob Dole, and then someone named Senator Joe Biden, now the President of the United States, to advocate for democracy. His efforts to hold Slobodan Milosevic to account for war crimes were critical for advancing peace and democracy in the Balkans. Meanwhile, Shirley eloquently made the case to the American people during the war as to why Kosovo must be an independent country. Under Joe and Shirley's leadership, the Albanian American Civic League tugged at the American conscience. It pricked the American conscience. It reminded us that democracy and human rights in Kosovo were the unfinished issues of the Balkan conflict. Today, Congress continues to work towards a Southeast Europe that is at peace, whole, and democratic, one that includes an independent Kosovo. On January 10th, I presided, and I'm glad to announce that we have newly confirmed ambassador. Ambassador Hovenier presented his credentials to President Osmani during his hearing before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, which I chaired. I impressed upon him, as the nominee, my concern that the United States has tried to take a neutral approach in normalization talks between Kosovo and Serbia, when Serbia is disproportionately responsible for the current lack of talks. I support increased United States engagement in these talks, and I'm pleased that President Biden appointed an incredibly qualified candidate to represent us in Pristina. Both our ambassadors to Pristina and Belgrade were young diplomats at the Rambouillet Conference. The United States now has put some of our best players on the field for the first time in a while. However, we can't rest on our laurels. Congress has to continue to work to ensure the rights of Albanians, and particularly in the Preševa Valley, and I have pushed the State Department to increase its engagement on this front, as I said I would when we were here in September. With so much important work to do, I welcome the contributions of the Albanian American Civic League towards advancing peace and democracy in the region. When the history of Kosovo is written in its future chapters, there is no question in my mind that Joe and Shirley and the Albanian Civic League will have gilded pages of that chapter of Kosovo history. Thank you very much.
Go over the key elements of what it's going to take to see Kosovo progress again. We've been on a long road of positive progression, interrupted by the Kosovo wars, as you know, and other things. So we just wanted to go on record to say that we need your help to kind of promote the message of the Albanian people in Kosovo and in the Balkans for their self-determination again, for their human rights, especially when you have such aggressive adversaries. I don't even mention their name, but here they are. So with that, I will ask you to just make a couple of comments, and Shirley, maybe you'll ask.
So I think you all heard the question, which is how soon can we have hearings in the Senate about Kosovo and its future, and how we realize its future of independence and freedom and prosperity in a way that all Kosovars desire and deserve. And so, of course, before the Foreign Relations Committee, we deal with the whole world, and the world is on fire right now. Of course, we have the immediate challenge of Russia as it amasses 130,000 troops on the borders of Ukraine. And for us as Americans, this is beyond the question of Ukraine itself. What we cannot have is a Munich moment. Those of you who may remember history may remember 1938, when Neville Chamberlain ultimately gave Czechoslovakia to Adolf Hitler in pursuit of peace at any price. And the result of that we saw was that peace was not accomplished, but that in fact Hitler continued his voracious desire to gain more and more territory in Europe. Putin is very clear about his goals. He laments the demise of the Soviet Union, and he seeks to recreate what he calls Nouveau Russia, to recreate, to rebuild those countries that are now separate and independent and bring it back into the Soviet orbit. I say that only because that's taken a lot of time for us. Also, we have the challenge of China, which is probably, until Russia's aggression, the single most geostrategic challenge. And we have the challenge of North Korea firing missiles. And we have the challenge in our own hemisphere, of Venezuela, El Salvador, Nicaragua, just to mention a few. So there's a lot on the agenda. But having said that, I have spoken to the chair of the Europe subcommittee, and instead of waiting for a full committee hearing, which is what my desire would be, and we still may be able to do that, to have a hearing at the Europe subcommittee level that can begin the dialogue. And I would hope that we would get there sometime in the next 2 months. And if we do that, we will begin a dialogue that I think will be incredibly important.
My question is this. President Biden is one of the most knowledgeable people about the conflict in Kosovo and the Balkans. He appointed very powerful ambassadors, Slovenia, Gabriel Escobar. They are very strong and powerful, but the statements that we are getting are still very unclear about where they stand on the policy. It appears that they are going along with the European policy, which is appeasement, infinite appeasement of Serbia, indefinite appeasement of Serbia. That's wrong. And also the Washington Agreement, they are mentioning the Washington Agreement. They are pushing and the pressure in Kosovo to give up the sovereignty by creating those municipalities with clean Serbian association, which is against the European and American policy. What can we do to stop this, and to our representatives to see them take a lead, not follow the Europe? They should take a lead to resolve the conflict, because the conflict will not be resolved by peace in Serbia.
The question, in essence, was, we have good ambassadors, great, but the messaging that we're getting is not as strong, not as clear, and as decisive as we would like as it relates to Kosovo. What can we do to change that reality? And so I think that the hearing that I just talked about always rivets the attention of the State Department in terms of what is it that Congress is seeking, and what is it that we get the administration to focus on. As I just described the world, part of the challenge, and we think about this administration being in, like if it was in for years, it just culminated its first year in office. It has been dealing with a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic. So we had nobody vaccinated. Now we have 200 million people vaccinated. It was dealing with the challenges of the pandemic that ultimately led to enormous economic consequences. So we passed the American Rescue Plan to rescue businesses, restaurants, people, help families. We passed an infrastructure bill when we, in fact, have the worst infrastructure that we've had since Eisenhower and the interstate highway system. I say that only to say it has not had its attention focused in a way that we would like it to see, particularly in global matters. So now is an opportunity to rivet the administration's attentions as we deal with Russia, which is its most immediate thing, I have to be honest, but by the same token, take the opportunity to say that there are other challenges in Europe that need to be dealt with so that peace and stability can not only happen, hopefully, in Eastern Europe, but can happen in the Balkans as well. And so I think the hearing that the Congressman asked about is going to be the gateway towards getting that focus. And we are committed to making that happen. I'm sorry that I'm going to have to leave, but thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Macedonia, Montenegro, Kosovo Valley, and realize that lobbying is the most effective way to realize the national cause. If they already know this and choose another group to lobby for them, though fine with me, I would suggest this to them. Joe DiGuardi's voice, now aided by Shirley's, is still the most powerful one. Finally, though I like the book, don't just take my word for it, because I am confident that after reading it, you will come to the same conclusion. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm now introducing Agim Malichkai. Many of you people know him. He's been a member of the board and the executive board of the Albanian American Civic League and Foundation for, I think, 30 years.
Yeah,
31 to be exact, okay. And as many of you know, and I'm going to read this exactly, he was Deputy Director for North America in charge of tourism for Kosovo and the former Yugoslavia. You know about him. But when the former Yugoslavia collapsed, he had to immediately return with his family to Kosovo. But then, once he was in Kosovo and Serbia overtook it and the occupation began, he fled with his family from his home in Dečan, came back to the United States, and built the very important Kosovo Tours International. I think they're all aware of it. The leading travel agency serving the Albanian American community and non-Albanian professionals involved in Western Europe and the Western Balkans. With that, welcome.
I'm gonna read, and I'm gonna be pretty short by reading. Otherwise, I could go on if I don't read. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests. I want to mention especially our historian, great historian Yusuf Bujoli, who is with us, the ambassador of Albania, Mr. Ferit Hoxha, Mr. Kufaj, our ambassador in New York, and our new ambassador in Dugoli. We wish him great success. We need his help. If I forget somebody else, I'm sorry. Let me go on because I want to be short. Today, we are celebrating the historical work of former American Congressman, our branch origin, Joseph J. Dioguardi, and the Albanian American Civic League during years 1985-93, prepared by the member of Executive Board of Albanian American Civic League, Dr. Faton Bislimi. Thank you, Faton.
Thank you again.
In a book titled Quest for Albanian Freedom and the Fall of Yugoslavia. I would like to emphasize the well-established truth, also documented in the book written by Faton, that Joseph J. Dioguardi is a historical figure of the Albanian nation. I'm not going to count this. Great national leaders and historical figures are born at a certain time and created in certain historical circumstances and crucial moments of a nation. They are unique with leadership skills, bravery, and accomplishments. Due to our nation's turbulent but glorious history, our people have many such sons and daughters. Among them are those that changed the course of our history forever, such as Gjergj Kanstrioti Skanderbeu, Ismail Qemali, Ibrahim Rugova, Adem Yashari, and Joseph J. Dioguardi.
Thank you.
Joseph Dioguardi is without any doubt a living legend of the Albanian nation. Following the path of Fancenoli and Fajkonica, he is the father of organized, modern, very successful Albanian-American lobbying activity in Washington and beyond. Joe's first 4 years as a congressman, then as a president of Albanian American Civic League, joined in 1994 by Shote Galica, Shirley Cloyce Dioguardi, and supported by the board of Albanian American Civic League and many thousands of Albanians in the United States. Their work was extremely important in achieving Kosovo's freedom and independence. Even though Kosovo was by far the biggest challenge and the most important issue, Joe, Shirley, and the League have been standing up for the human and national rights of the whole Albanian nation. Almost every single U.S. senator and congressman since 1985 who helped our national cause was initially engaged by Joe and the League. There are other countless activities which will be documented in many other books, I would like to mention only a few. Meeting of President Rugova, legendary President Rugova, and President Clinton, support for KLA and legendary Commander Adem Yashari and other commanders, and removal from the US terrorist list of the KLA, and as well as impressive demonstrations that we had in New York and Washington. All of you remember, thousands of Albanians showed up in these events. The people of Kosovo fought for their freedom from Serbian occupation for more than a century. In the last 30 years, there were 3 decisive factors that brought about the freedom and the independence: the peaceful resistance by democratic movement led by Dr. Ibrahim Rugova, the armed resistance by Kosovo Liberation Army led by Adem Yashari and other heroes, and the lobbying activity in Washington led by Joe Dioguardi. American help and NATO bombing of Serbia came as a result and combination of these 3 factors. The history of Kosovo's independence will be incomplete unless a monument, not any award, unless a monument to Joe and Shirley, until that monument is built in Pristina. Everybody else got monuments. These people who changed the course of history in the United States for the Albanian nations, they deserve a monument in Pristina and in Tirana and everywhere where Albanian people live. They would not accept any recognition by corrupt sellout politicians. It is widely expected. It is widely expected that President Osmani and our Prime Minister Kurti will do it, or this will be done sometimes later by somebody else, but there will be a shame on them if they don't do it. The League's professional, independent, powerful work in Washington will continue regardless, until the final defeat of criminal Serbia. Yes. For me, and millions of Albanian Americans all over the world, Joe and Shirley are extraordinary personalities and heroes. It has been an honor to know them and work closely with them on behalf of the Albanian exceptional nation. I say it 2 times, I will say it 10 times for people who are ashamed to be Albanians. Albanian nation is exceptional, like American nation is exceptional. It has been an honor to know them and work closely with them on behalf of our exceptional nation. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Shirley. And thank you, Albanian American Civic League and Albanian Americans who helped our cause. May God bless American and Albanian nations. Thank you.
Is Ambassador Ferhat Hoxha. And I think you know he's the new permanent representative of Albania in the United Nations, but as many of you, I think many of you will recall, he first served in this role from 2009 to 2015. Am I correct? I think. And as you'll also recall, he held the first major event. He designed it.
These 2 fantastic, wonderful, exceptional, as you were qualified persons. It is a lifetime engagement by Joe and Shirley for the rights, for the dignity of Albanians everywhere in Kosovo, in North Macedonia, Macedonia at that time, North Macedonia today, in Preševo Valley, in Montenegro, and of course for the well-being, development, prosperity in Albania. So we have been lucky and blessed, and he has it on his name actually. God has protected you, Dioguardi. So we have been blessed to have such supporters who did not spare an effort, their time, their energy, their skills to go where power is. We ambassadors do a fantastic job, but it's not enough. And those 2 colleagues can testify. We need people who go where power is, to have that credible information, to give that information, that first-hand information, to those who decide. And without that, we would not have been in Kosovo or in Albania where we are. That was my first point. My second point is that your work not only is recognized by us, But reality has shown what has happened. So your efforts are not in vain. And Albanians everywhere, but I can speak about Albanians in Albania, will never ever forget. Your work, activity, contribution, impact has to be recognized, will be recognized duly in Kosovo, I hope, but I can assure you, in Albania.
Thank you.
The third, I would like to say just, of course there are many problems, and the international recognition of Kosovo is not complete. It will come, because that's the only way. It's just one straight avenue. It's not easy, it has become complicated, but I was very happy to hear Senator Menendez committing, because it's complicated in Europe, but it can be sped up by the US. So if you continue your work, which I think you will continue, this is priority number one. The US needs to get engaged seriously, to push Europeans and to get over with that issue with Serbia.
Yes.
Kosovo is an independent state. It has nothing to do with Serbia unless Kosovo decides to have relations, dealings in everything that states do with each other. We have to come there, because without that, the dossier of the Western Balkan Six will not be completed. My last point is Albania's Security Council. I'm privileged and honored, and this is the honor of my life and my team, that for the first time Albania is serving where decisions are made, where the important issues are dealt with. And if I'm losing a little bit of voice today, I will be missing it tomorrow at the special meeting that we will have, and the clash we'll have with Russia on Ukraine. Tomorrow at 10 o'clock there will be a meeting in the Security Council to expose Russia and to try to have Russia say that publicly that it will not attack. We don't know what's happening, they are preparing, but we will expose Russia tomorrow to say that Russia respects the territorial integrity and sovereignty of another state, and Albania will be very vocal on that together with the United States.
Thank you.
The Security Council has added for Albania not only a spotlight, not only responsibility, but it has added a layer, an important layer that we have not had in our fantastic, exceptional relations with the United States. I sit every day close to a member of the Biden's cabinet, Ambassador Linda Thomas-Greenfield, and I talk with her every day on various issues. So whenever I need to tell her something, I have her close to me every day, and I'm speaking about this engagement of the United States for Kosovo because it's extremely important.
Wonderful.
Senator Menendez said that it was difficult, but they will have to do a little bit more. And I'm concluding by saying that every time you went to testify, every time you, like this one, the other people, there have been so many occasions. Please accept one wholehearted thank and gratitude for every second that you spent for us.
People have been exposed to the greatness of history when it comes to Albanian history. Now, you see the statue of George Kastriani, is it still that you know that 550 years ago, there was a great general that was a hostage, well, he was taken as a hostage by the Sultan. At that time, I guess it was Murad. Was it Murad? I think it was. And then later came Mehmet. But this man realized that he was really Albanian. And in a way, this is my story. Because I was raised in an Italian-American neighborhood where I had to distinguish myself. My mother was from Bari, she's Italian. And then my father comes from Italy, but he comes from one of the most famous Albanian-speaking villages, Kutundi Greci. Now, why is that the case? And it's in the book, because it's the only village that history shows Skanderbeg actually put his feet in, because when he left, it wasn't, everybody likes to call it Calabria, but it was really Campania, which is just north of Calabria. He found us, believe it or not. He was part of the refugee camp in Macedonia. His parents were there. They escaped, and Fatan then found his way to Texas, where he became a student. And then he calls me one day, 2002, to say, Joe, I'm reading all this stuff about your league, and now in Europe, for the youth of Europe, they have a forum in Prague, and I would like to represent the Albanian youth. I said, well, who are you? And he explained who he was, how he got there, whatnot. I said, listen, I'm a certified public accountant. If you give me a budget and you explain why this is important for the Albanian people, for you to address the youth of Europe, and by the way, he has his background in math and in computers, he prepared a wonderful presentation. I guess it was with a PowerPoint. And the unbelievable thing is that we almost didn't do it. I had to raise the money. We don't sit on money in the Civic League. I have to call people. He wanted $1,800. We raised it for him. It included the airfare, the hotel. He goes to Prague. Long story short, he gets #1 out of 50 students that are scholars. He is scored, not by Albanians, but by the European professors as #1. Calls me back again the following year. Says, Joe, now it's in Brussels. And now it seems to be even more important because I'm reading what you and Shirley did to come up with this resolution with Tom Lantos and Henry Hyde. And I'd like to go there and I'd like to present. And I said, if you tell me that you can make a presentation with that resolution, HR 24, for the future of Albania as an independent state, because don't forget, this is 2002, didn't become independent even in words until 2008. So he did that. And again, he scores #1. The only Albanian there from youth, he scores #1. So with that, I want to introduce you to our #1 scholar, Fatam Bislimi, who left there, who went to get his master's degree in Harvard, and we were pleased to help him do that, but it's really his work that did it. And then he became Dr. Bislimi from Alberta University, is it? In Edmonton. And you don't know what he went through to be here today, how many planes he had to switch, and he gets here just in time. Thank you so much.
I am going to spare you from a boring PowerPoint presentation and a long speech, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about why we're here today, and that's a book. And it's barely my book. It's the book that talks about what has been done just in the beginnings. It's only part 1 of a long history of what has happened with the Albanian American Civic League, with Joe, Shirley, and all of you that have supported them in this huge, important journey for the Albanian nation. All of you have a copy of it, so I'm going to point to some pages. I'm going to try to be as prompt and as short as possible to give you the bulk of it, to give you the gist of it, to give you what the key points are and why it is so important. Before I do that, I just want to really thank, out of the bottom of my heart, Joe and Shirley for the wonderful opportunity to be here with all of you today, for the amazing work they have done in over 3 decades to support the Albanian national cause, and most importantly, to support Kosovo. I want to thank every member of the board of directors who have spared nothing to support and continue this mission. They came today from across the United States. Some drove, some flew. Some couldn't just make it because flights were canceled. The nor'easter that hit yesterday was a major issue. I barely made it myself here. We have some special guests here with us today. Professor Yusuf Bujovi from Kosovo, a historian, somebody who has done a wonderful job in telling the world the true history of the country. It would not have happened if he didn't pursue 30 years of work to make that book a reality, and the Yalifat Publishing Company in Houston that made it possible to bring it to us in English. I want to also thank a very special person who's not here today, couldn't make it, Haki Dervishi, another board member who has supported this book and who has supported the work that I did for over 2.5 years in documenting what we see here today. A couple of good friends that came from Kosovo that have been my right-hand man, not only for the book, but for the work that I do in Kosovo on behalf of the Civic League and on behalf of the people of Kosovo. On the Ishvatim, thank you for being here. we have distinguished guests today. We all are distinguished by the virtue of being here. Let me say that. But I want to recognize Ambassador Hoxha, who, in my opinion, is one of the most important diplomats we have in the Albanian world today. We've missed him in New York for a while. He was here before, had a different assignment for a while. He's returned. And he returns at a crucial time in the history of Albanian diplomacy to serve Albania and the Albanian nation as a representative in the Security Council for the first time in history of the Albanian state. Another equally important diplomat that just started in Washington, Ambassador Lirinë from Kosovo. He's just been here a few weeks, maybe a few months, I'm not sure. He has served the Republic of Kosovo in previous diplomatic assignments as ambassador in Brussels, if I'm not wrong, in Turkey after that, and now ends up in Washington. And his colleague from New York, Ambassador from Zimisufa, who leads our mission in New York on behalf of the Republic of Kosovo. Thank you for being here. Milan, thank you for being here. He has been a supporter of books by Bujovi, and together with Ramiz Tafida of Houston, they have made sure that we tell the story. Most importantly, though, I did this book, and I'm here today not because of us, but because of those who come after us. And I want to recognize my daughter, Fiona. Can you just stand up for a minute? She's just a teenager. She turned 13. But I brought her with me so that this generation of young people understands how we came to be where we are today, and then they hopefully take on the torch as we pass on. And nobody's going to live forever. So we got to make sure that we document as much as we can so that those who come after us know what has happened. With that, I'm going to start with my little presentation. Again, I'm going to spare you from a PowerPoint, although we kind of set up for that, but I want it to be more interactive, and I want you guys all have a copy of the book. So here is the key points that I say that have really kind of gotten me to think, although I've been with Joe and Shirley and Civic League exactly two decades now. But as I was looking at the materials that I got from Joe and Shirley and the archives, congressional documents, resolutions, letters, all of that, some of which are published here for the first time, I kind of relived that entire history. I was not part of any of this in the 80s and 90s. I was just a little kid. So for me, it was enriching in many ways. Beyond enriching, it was inspirational. And this is, as I said, just the beginning. It all starts in 1984, when Joe gets elected to Congress against all odds. Nobody expected him to win. He did win. His win was not only for his political ambitions and his own political agenda. I think his win was way more important for the Albanian nation. Things would have not happened the way they have happened without that win of that election in 1984.
Thank you.
Beyond that, a lot of people would, kind of ask the question, well, how did it happen that he then became so involved with the Albanian issues? Well, Joe talked about that, and everybody else who spoke before me talked about that, so I'm not going to repeat any of that. We know the story.
Who do I sign it to? You didn't send for the membership.
I gotta check it in my own system.
Yes, do that. Certainly.
Not Joe, nobody will do it.
Who signed this already? Signed this already?
That are on there historically. Key point, number one. There's three key points that we should remember of the league. One of the 12 that paid $12,000 in
June 17, 1986. It was shown by only one member of Congress.
Për televizionin e shqiptarëve të Amerikës, Alt TV USA, nga New Jersey, refused